Part 1 ended in 1989. Nintendo had just launched the Game Boy, 180 million units that would eventually sell, on worse hardware than every competitor. 100 years from playing cards to pocket gaming. Part 2 covers the next 35 years. The console wars, the near bankruptcy, the Wii that nobody took seriously until it sold 101 million units, the Wii U that nearly ended the company, and the Switch, the second best selling home console in history. Nintendo's second chapter is more dramatic than the first. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System launched in Japan on November 21st, 1990. In North America, August 23rd, 1991. It entered a market where Sega had been waiting. The Sega Genesis, launched in North America in 1989, had a significant head start and was aggressively marketed with a campaign built around the tagline, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." Sega positioned the Genesis as the console for older players. Faster, edgier, with blood in Mortal Kombat, where Nintendo's version had sweat. The SNES launched at $199 in North America, bundled with Super Mario World, which introduced Yoshi and expanded the Mario platforming formula significantly. The console's custom hardware included the Super FX chip, a co-processor that enabled 3D polygon rendering on select titles, used in Star Fox, and a Mode 7 scaling effect that powered the pseudo 3D racing of F-Zero and the overworld map of Super Mario Kart. The SNES library defined the era. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past in 1991, widely considered one of the greatest games ever made. Super Metroid in 1994, the definitive version of Metroid's atmospheric exploration formula. Chrono Trigger in 1995, Square's collaborative RPG featuring time travel across multiple eras. Donkey Kong Country in 1994, Rare's pre-rendered 3D graphics that pushed visual expectations for 2D gaming. Street Fighter II in 1992, the definitive home version of Capcom's genre-defining fighter. The SNES ultimately sold 49.1 million units. The Genesis sold approximately 34.8 million. Nintendo won the 16-bit generation, but Sega had proven that genuine competition was possible. The SNES era established Nintendo's first-party publishing philosophy in its mature form. Quality control remains absolute. The Nintendo seal of quality continued to gate third-party releases. First-party titles were given full development cycles without commercial deadline pressure. Miyamoto's teams iterated until the product met an internal standard rather than a calendar date. This produced games of extraordinary consistency, but also created a pipeline that third-party developers found increasingly difficult to work within, as production costs rose and development timelines extended. The SNES era is the most nostalgia-dense period in Nintendo's history for millions of players. Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, a library so strong that the word SNES still functions as shorthand for a specific quality of game design 30 years later. But Sony had been waiting, and the disc format they had developed, originally designed as a SNES CD-ROM add-on before that partnership collapsed, was going into a competitor's machine. The PlayStation launched in December 1994 in Japan, and everything that followed was shaped by what Nintendo did next. The Nintendo 64 launched in Japan on June 23, 1996. In North America, September 29, 1996. It launched with one game that changed gaming permanently. Super Mario 64, designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and his team, was the first fully three-dimensional Mario game. It introduced analog stick control through the N64's distinctive controller. Camera systems managed through a dedicated C-button cluster, and open three-dimensional environments that players could explore from any direction. The game sold 11.9 million copies and became the template for 3D platform game design. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, launched November 21st, 1998, became the highest rated game in Metacritic's history at 99 out of 100. Its Z-targeting combat system, musical puzzle mechanic, and narrative scale redefined what a console RPG adjacent adventure game could be. The N64 sold 32.93 million units, significantly below the SNES's 49.1 million. The primary reason was the cartridge. Hiroshi Yamauchi's decision to stay with the cartridges for the N64, while Sony and Sega moved to CD-ROM, had direct commercial consequences. Cartridges cost significantly more to manufacture than CDs. A cartridge game typically cost publishers $10 to $15 per unit to produce, compared to $1 to $2 for a CD. This higher manufacturing cost translated to higher retail prices and lower profit margins for third parties. Storage capacity was the second issue. An N64 cartridge held a maximum of 64 megabytes. A PlayStation CD held up to 650 megabytes. Final Fantasy VII, with its pre-rendered cinematic sequences and full orchestral soundtrack, required 3 CDs on PlayStation. It could not have been made within N64 cartridge constraints. Square, Capcom and Konami, studios that had built their international foundations on SNES software, shifted their major releases to PlayStation. Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night all launched on PlayStation rather than N64. The third-party exodus permanently changed Nintendo's position in the market. The N64 produced some of the most critically reviewed games ever made. Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time are still cited as foundational texts for their respective genres 30 years later. But the business consequences of the cartridge decision, the loss of Square, the loss of major third-party support, created a pattern that would define Nintendo's relationship with third parties for the next decade. Yamauchi's successor was about to face the consequences. On May 31, 2002, Hiroshi Yamauchi stepped down as president after 53 years. Satoru Iwata took over, and the GameCube was already underperforming. The GameCube launched in Japan on September 14, 2001. In North America on November 18, 2001. It arrived over a year after the PlayStation 2 had already established itself in the market, and 2 weeks before the original Xbox. The PlayStation 2 had launched in Japan on March 4, 2000, and in North America on October 26, 2000. By the time the GameCube arrived in late 2001, the PS2 already had a 12-month head start in North America and a library that was growing rapidly. The GameCube was fighting an uphill battle from day one. The GameCube sold 21.74 million units, Nintendo's worst performing home console to that point. The PS2 sold 155 million. The Xbox sold 24 million. The mini-disc format addressed the storage capacity problem of the cartridge era, but created its own issue. The GameCube's proprietary 1.5 GB discs were unreadable by standard DVD players. In an era when the PS2's DVD playback was a significant purchase driver, the GameCube offered no equivalent functionality. The library was strong: Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Resident Evil 4, all critically acclaimed, but third-party support remained thin and the console's commercial position deteriorated through its lifespan. Satoru Iwata, who had joined Nintendo in 2000 as head of corporate planning and became president in 2002, recognized the structural problem clearly. Nintendo was competing on hardware specifications with Sony and Microsoft, a race it was losing, while its software library was narrowing to first-party exclusives. Iwata's diagnoses were precise. Competing on the same axis as Sony and Microsoft was a losing strategy. Nintendo needed to compete on a different axis entirely. The answer was expanding who played games, not what the games looked like. The Nintendo DS launched October 21, 2004 in North America, had 2 screens, a touch interface, and wireless multiplayer built in. It was designed for play in short sessions, in public, by people who had never engaged with gaming before. It sold 154.02 million units, the best-selling dedicated gaming handheld in history. Brain Age in 2005, a cognitive training application, became one of the DS best-selling titles, reaching demographics that no previous Nintendo product had touched. Older adults, non-gamers, people who would not have described themselves as players. Iwata articulated what he saw happening in a speech that became foundational to Nintendo's identity. The idea that the gaming audience had stopped growing because games had stopped being accessible. The solution wasn't better graphics. It was a different relationship with the controller. That philosophy produced the Wii, and nobody took it seriously, until they couldn't ignore it. The Wii launched November 19, 2006 in North America at $249 with motion controls and Wii Sports in the box. The gaming press was skeptical, the public was not. The Wii sold 101.63 million units, outselling the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in the same generation. It was Nintendo's best performing home console since the NES. Wii Sports, bundled with the console in North America, became the best-selling game in Nintendo's history at the time, reaching 82.9 million copies. It reached demographics Nintendo had never accessed through a home console: elderly players in retirement homes, family gatherings, people who had not played the game since the NES era. The motion control concept, a Wii remote that tracked physical movement and translated it into game input, was a direct application of Iwata's expand the audience philosophy. You didn't need to learn a controller layout. You swung your arm, you bowled, you played tennis. Then came the Wii U, launched November 18, 2012 in North America. A home console with a gamepad controller featuring a second screen. Sold 13.56 million units, Nintendo's worst performing home console ever. The Wii U failed for three compounding reasons. First, unclear messaging. The gamepad looked like a tablet peripheral rather than a new console. Many consumers assumed it was an accessory for the existing Wii rather than a new system. Nintendo's marketing never resolved this confusion at launch. Second, weak third-party support. Developers who had returned for the Wii's motion control novelty found the Wii U's architecture difficult to develop for, and its initial base insufficient to justify major investment. EA, Activision and Ubisoft all scaled back or withdrew Wii U support within the first year. Third, tablet competition. The iPad launched in 2010. By 2012, the gamepad's unique selling point, a touchscreen supplementary device, was something millions of consumers already had. The novelty was new. In July 2015, Satoru Iwata died at age 55 from bile duct cancer. He had led Nintendo through the DS and Wii, the most commercially successful period in the company's history outside the NES era, and had been steering the response to the Wii U's failure when he died. The Wii U era was the closest Nintendo came to irrelevance since the playing card plateau of the 1950s. Analysts predicted Nintendo would exit the hardware business, that it would become a software developer for PlayStation and Xbox, that the era of dedicated gaming hardware for Nintendo was finished. What came next was the most dramatic product recovery in gaming history. March 3, 2017, the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch launched March 3, 2017. A console that docked to a television. A console you could unlock and take anywhere. One device, two modes, no compromise. The Nintendo Switch sold over 143 million units as of June 2024, making it the second best-selling home console in history, behind the PS2, and the third best-selling dedicated gaming device overall when handheld systems are included. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild launched alongside the Switch on March 3, 2017. It won Game of the Year at the 2017 Game Awards. Its open-world approach, abandoning the Zelda formula's linear structure for a physics-based sandbox, became the most discussed game design shift of its generation. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe leads the Switch catalog with 69.56 million copies sold. Animal Crossing New Horizons follows at 48.62 million, launched March 20, 2020, directly into the global pandemic lockdown period, becoming a cultural phenomenon that reached audiences far beyond traditional gaming demographics. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate follows at 36.93 million. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, May 12, 2023, sold over 20 million copies within its first 6 weeks. The Super Mario Bros. Movie generated over $1.3 billion at the global box office. The Nintendo Switch 2 launched June 5, 2025. It sold 17.37 million units between launch and December 31, 2025, placing it ahead of every prior Nintendo console at the same point in its commercial life. Between April and December 2025, the 9 months of Nintendo's fiscal year ending March 2026, the company posted $12.3 billion in net sales, a 99.3% increase year-on-year, driven by the Switch 2 launch. The Switch's hybrid design solved the problem that had defined Nintendo's console struggles since the GameCube: the separation between portable and home gaming audiences. The DS had sold 154.02 million units, and the 3DS had sold 75.94 million, building a massive portable audience that remained loyal to Nintendo through multiple handheld generations. Meanwhile, the Wii U had proven that Nintendo's home console audience had largely evaporated after the Wii. Only 13.56 million players followed Nintendo into that generation. The Switch solved both problems simultaneously. Players who would have bought a handheld successor to the 3DS were now also buying a home console. Nintendo's loyal portable audience became the Switch's launch foundation without requiring Nintendo to rebuild home console trust from scratch. One device served both audiences, and the combined result was the second best-selling home console in history. The Switch's success wasn't just commercial. Animal Crossing New Horizons, during the 2020 pandemic, reached people who had never held a Nintendo controller. Politicians held campaign events in the game. Celebrities discussed their island designs in interviews. A game about a peaceful island village became one of the defining cultural objects of a global crisis. Nintendo's ability to reach beyond the core gaming audience, the philosophy Satoru Iwata had articulated and Hiroshi Yamauchi had first intuited when he saw Gunpei Yokoi's Toy Claw, had never been more visible. From a card shop in Kyoto in 1889 to the second best-selling home console in history in 2024, Nintendo had done what it always did when its back was against the wall. It found a different way to play. From the SNES winning the 16-bit war, to the N64's Cartridge decision costing the company Square and Final Fantasy, to the Wii reaching 101 million people who had never played a console before, to the Wii U nearly ending everything, to the Switch becoming the second best-selling home console in history. Nintendo's second chapter is not a story of consistent dominance. It's a story of repeated reinvention under pressure. Every time the market moved away from Nintendo, Nintendo moved somewhere the market hadn't thought to look. The Wii when nobody wanted motion controls. The DS when nobody thought portable gaming could expand. The Switch when nobody believed a hybrid concept could work. The company that started by selling playing cards in 1889 is still finding new ways to play in 2026. That's not luck. That's the oldest philosophy in the building. Leave luck to heaven and then build something nobody else would.